Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. Chapter 28 from our father Abraham, and this one is called Four Kings Must Die. Hallelu et Adonai kol goim, shabechu kol haomim, ki gavar alenu chasdo, ve'emet Adonai leolam hallelujah. The seventh trial of Abraham. After these incidents, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Abram, I am your shield, your reward is exceedingly great." Achar hadvarim ha'ele, usually it's vayhi achar hadvarim ha'ele, right? Ve'elohim nisa et Avram, we're going to see this in chapter 22. Vayhi is vay and he, in other words, oy vay vay is coming, right? But achar, it was after these things. We're going to see what, okay? Achar dvarim ha'ele, haya dvar Hashem el Avram b'machazeh le'emor. Al tira Avram anochi magen lach, lecha scharcha harbe meod. So this is Genesis 15:1. To all the prophets, he was revealed in a vision of the night, in a dream, but to Abraham, he was revealed in a vision and in a revelation, meaning he was conscious and unconscious, or rather, unconscious and then conscious, the revelation. This is absolutely fascinating. The Rambam says that the revelation that Abraham received now was likened to what Moses had all the time. This is something that no prophet among the prophets even came close to receiving. Genesis 18:1, Parashat Vayera. Vayera elav Hashem be'alonei Mamre, Vehu yoshev petach oel kechom hayom. Now the Lord appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, and he was sitting at the entrance of the tent when the day was hot. And then God tells Moses in Exodus 8:6, Parashat Vayera, and yes, they are linked. I did a teaching on that. Va'era el Avraham, el Yitzchak, el Yaakov, be'el Shaddai, u'shmi Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, lo nodati lahem. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob with the name Almighty God, right, with the four-letter name of God, but with the name, not the four-letter name of God, excuse me, it's the English, Be'el Shaddai. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but my name, Hashem, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, it did not become known to them. A vision is called a chizayon or chazon. A revelation is called mar'eh. And so mar'eh, va'era, vayera, that's a revelation actually. Mar'eh is also the same word as mar'ah. Mar'eh is, again, it's hard to translate this. It only works in Hebrew because a mar'eh, if you Google translate, it'll say it's a vision, but it's not. Mar'eh is also like mar'ah. Exact same letters, same spelling. What is a mar'ah? Mar'ah is a mirror. You see, in other words, you see very, very clearly a certain reflection that God wants you to see. So that's why this is not in a dream, but rather more conscious. Okay, meaning you see as clear as looking in the mirror. And as we had discussed in the past, the smaller you make yourself, the clearer the picture you see. Moses was the humblest human being to have ever lived because he took nothing for himself. Abraham didn't take a shoelace, right? He took nothing for himself. And as we have been learning about Abraham, he lived the very same way. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob paved the way for Moses. This is how it works. Okay, now you may be thinking to yourself, but surely it says in many other places that a mar'eh was given to Isaiah, to the prophet Amos and King Solomon, and yeah, it absolutely does. But the Radal explains how each time it says that God appeared to them in a mar'eh, in later verses, it explains exactly what it is that they saw. And it was in a more of a picture form from a distance. In other words, I saw in a mar'eh, I saw this, that, or the other. There wasn't motion. There was just, he saw a picture, right? Snapshot, if you will. But those who received the mar'eh, the revelation, did not receive the chazon, and vice versa. But Abraham received both, and that's why this is very rare. You either receive one or the other based on where you're at, but Abraham received both. Whence do we know of the vision, because it is written in Genesis 15:1, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, machazeh, saying, "Fear not, Abram, I am your shield in this world, and your reward is exceedingly great in the world to come." Why did God have to reassure Abraham on this matter and give him a double confirmation? Because Abraham knew, just as we should know, that miracles and blessings that God may give us in this world can take away from our blessings in the world to come. Abraham just finished slaughtering the 4 kings and their great armies with no more than a handful of men at best. And even before that, he descended to Egypt and ascended a very wealthy man. All these miracles upon miracles are being done to Abram. Not to mention the fiery furnace and everything that God had blessed him with thus far. So when God said, "Don't worry, I will be your shield in this world," Abraham indeed worried, rightfully so, because he knew how temporary this world is compared to the infinity of the world to come. And so God told him, "Don't worry and don't fear. You have more than enough merit to receive all the goodness, both in this world and in the world to come. Nothing will be taken from you." And so our text says, God told Abraham, "Do not fear, for my right hand protects you anywhere you may go." We can also see in Joshua 24, we're going to read 2 and 3. "And Joshua said to the whole nation, 'Thus said the Lord God of Israel, your fathers dwelt on the other side of the river from the earliest time, Terah, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor, and they served other gods,'" meaning not Abraham, but their fathers, right? "And I took your father," God is speaking through Joshua, "and I took your father Abraham from the other side of the river and led him throughout all the land of Canaan and multiplied his seed and gave him Isaac. Like a divider before the iniquity, and I will, like a divider before the iniquity, and I will give you a good reward in this world and in the world to come, as it is said, and your reward is exceedingly great." Okay, so God brought Abraham also over the water, just like Israel was about to cross over the water with Joshua. And then, Israel's going to cross over with Joshua, and Abraham had to walk through all the land. Why did he have to walk through all the land? So Israel could then dwell in all that land, and they both had to cross over water, you'll see. Exceedingly great, harbe me'od, in this world and in the world to come. And in a revelation, mar'eh, from where do we get this? Where do we get the revelation from? As it is said in Genesis 18:1, Vayera elav Hashem be'lonei Mamre. Now the Lord appeared to him in the plains of Mamre. This is when God opens your real eyes, so your physical eyes don't get in the way. We are limited by what we see, right? That's it. I see this, I see that, that's what I see. Okay, now get your physical eyes out of the way. What do you see, right? So he shut his eyes and he actually opened up his mind's eye and he saw what he needed to see. We're going to discuss this next week, and boy, did these things blow my mind. Wait for next week, but we got some good stuff here too, don't you worry. Okay, but through faith, Abraham didn't need to physically see what came next. We would all love to actually see and understand and know for a fact what comes next. We know what is coming based on what is left, okay? But we don't know exactly how it's going to happen, nor do we know exactly when it is going to happen. Abraham couldn't care less because he's walking with God in the here and now, not in the tomorrow and the next week, next month, but in the here and now. I'm walking in the presence of the Holy One, blessed be He. He focused on the here and now. We got to focus on the here and now. Again, not on the past, because the past will drag us down, but in the here and now. Tomorrow doesn't exist yet. Here and now. For us, anyway. So like we said, but through faith, Abraham didn't need to physically see what was next, as it was his faith that opened up the pathways to true sight. Because he was in the here and now, and he took God for his word, here and now, it was shown to him. Okay, here's what comes. Great, cool. But either way, and he was unchanged. Abraham. And furthermore, it said that God appeared to him and not spoke to him. It didn't say vaydaber elav, vayera elav. And so we understand that this is what a revelation is, right? In other words, okay, you're closing your eyes, you're still conscious, but you're opening up your mind's eye to something else. Again, these words are actually from Rabbeinu Bachye. wow, how long? 1,200 years ago, wrote these things down. Incredible. He says, Patach et eina sechel, he opened up his mind's eye. Rabbi Yehuda said, that same night that the Holy One, blessed be He, revealed Himself to Abraham our father was the night of Passover. Again, I'm just going through the things already for next week, and we're going to get back to all these things. Okay. This is obviously going into the covenant of the pieces where God told Abraham to count the stars if he could this night. And what Abraham is about to experience happened both in the physical and in the spiritual realms. So first of all, as it was night, because down here on earth, you can't see the stars during the day. Now, yes, there are metaphors. There's the spiritual implications and the physical implications. If we're reading the Pshat, look at the stars. Oh, they're the stars. Okay, fine. So in other words, we know it was nighttime. So first of all, it was night because, like we said, you can't see the stars during the daytime. Second, God showed him the power that this specific night possesses. This is the night of the covenant of the pieces, as this is the very night that Abraham's descendants would be redeemed from the clutches of Egypt, and also in the end of days from the clutches of the nations, specifically Edom and Ishmael, Christianity and Islam. So in the meantime, is Abraham asleep or awake? Is he having a vision or a revelation? Because this thing goes on for a very long time. You guys aren't aware of how long this goes, but just notice when it's night and when it's day. If he's having a vision, that means that he's asleep. And so when we read that God took him outside, that would imply that he is not asleep, because then he would have to wake from his sleep and then go outside, meaning from his tent. But if it's a revelation, then why would God need to take him outside of anywhere, as he can be shown whatever he needs to see from wherever he is? He doesn't need to physically be moved or taken. He's right there in a revelation. Show me the universe. Boom. It's all good. So this is a combination of both, right? The word is machazeh, which in modern day Hebrew means play, as in a Broadway play, machazeh. You're seeing something. You're actually going to physically see something happen. So we know in the simple text, in the Pshat, when God took him outside to try and count the stars, this happened both in the physical, meaning this realm looking up, and in the spiritual, the supernal realm, looking down. As this we already learned in our past Parsha teachings. The language used here in the Hebrew means looking from upwards downwards, not down upwards. So if you're reading it, if you'll read it in the English, oh, look at the stars. Of course, look at the stars. But if you actually learn what the sages say and break down the Hebrew, you will see, wait a minute. God told him to look down at the stars and not up at the stars. Therefore, where was Abraham? Above the stars. Genesis 15:5. That's the verse. And he took him outside and he said, please look heavenward and count the stars. Best translation, I guess. Habetna shamayma, our sages say that though this language is understanding, Abraham told to look down at the stars, meaning he was above the stars at this point. And he brought him outside, says our text. Outside of what, though? Outside of the powers that govern this world, outside of any and every influence, outside of logic, space, and time. He took him outside. Let me show you behind the scenes. And God said to him, are you able to count the hosts of heaven? Tzva shamayim, says Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. If one needed to count the stars, this would be something, let's say, achievable, okay? I have to Google some of these things. Scientists believe that they have a rough estimate of our galaxy, which stands at 100 billion stars, and that there are 125 billion galaxies in our known universe. So that's a big number, of stars. But God isn't showing Abraham, again, you could still put a number to this, so it's roughly around. Okay, but God isn't showing Abraham the galaxies or the universe or the stars thereof, but rather he's showing him the angels, right? We discussed there are governing angels to every single aspect of creation, from a grain of sand to a blade of grass. Each one of them has an angel. So now think of all the blades of grass, and think of all the grains of sand, and think of every leaf on the tree, and every fruit, and every dog and cat and pony and whatever, everything and everything, gusts of wind in different directions, angels, everything. Every last thing, every ant has its own angel. One angel per. You understand? So now think of all of life and all the inanimate objects, every rock, every stone, every pebble, everything in this world, governing angels. Right? Okay, fine. So that's what I'm talking about here. Okay, so like we said, God isn't showing Abraham the galaxies or the universe, but he's showing him the angels, because the angels are the engines, or power cords rather, that control every aspect of creation. And where is the power source? Obviously, this, of course, comes from beneath the throne of God, which is infinite. Unlimited power. He said before him, sovereign of all the worlds, is there then a limit to your troops of angels? Is there a limit to your tzavaot shamayim? Is there a difference between quantity and quality, numbering and value? So obviously, since this was Abraham's reply, this isn't a matter of counting how many stars there are, but rather understanding the value of that which is infinite. He said to him, likewise your seed shall not be able to be counted due to their great number, as it is said, and he said unto him, so shall be your seed. Genesis 15:5. In the Hebrew, what God told Abraham was, Kach lo yisaper zarecha merov. Rov, as we know, has two meanings. One is numerical, rov, harbe, a lot, but the other one is greatness. You will not be able to count the greatness of your seed, not only their number, okay? And if you want to make it complicated, we could do that too, right? We know that there are 600,000 men by Mount Sinai, right? It says Israel will never be less than 600,000 men, ages 20 and up. Why 20 and up? Because when a man turns 20, that's when he receives his neshama. Okay, in other words, then he is tried as an adult, if you will. That's why 20 and up, that's when all the priests went to serve. That's when you go out to the military. It's for your own good, because before that you are incomplete. So that's why 20 and up. So you have 600,000 men, 20 and up, 600,000 women, 600,000 children, meaning anyone under 20, and 600,000 elderly. So by Mount Sinai, roughly, let's say 2.4 million of Israel, not including millions upon millions of Erev Rav. There were easily over 10 million people over there. But we also know that a single life of Israel is equal to an entire world, which makes Israel impossible to number, as well as impossible to put a price tag on. And when a single one of Israel does, according to the master of the universe, they themselves connect to the infinite. Bottom line, Israel are infinite, which is what God was trying to show Abraham. If one man lives according to God, he is equal to 600,000. So 600,000 times 600,000. But each one is equal to 600,000, while the other is also equal to 600,000. So it's 600,000 times infinity. There's your answer of, go ahead, try and count Israel, or the value of Israel. Now, I'll give you something interesting to chew on over here. And I know we discussed this before, but here we got it even in a little bit more detail. God told Abraham about his descendants, but Abraham saw that beneath him, according to the planets, in other words, when Abraham was up there, according to the planets and the stars, that he was not supposed to have children. He goes, okay, I see the cosmos, I understand, and I see that Abram, Avram, and Sarai, we can't have kids. It's not in the stars. It's not in the stars. Which is when God said, Abraham, all this I created. Yes, I created. Do you think it's hard for me to move the planet Jupiter from the east to the west, or vice versa? And so that's when it says, and God moved the planet across the heavens, and boom, now you have kids. What? You understand? I did this, says God. And so God moved Jupiter to make it so Abraham would indeed have children. Genesis 15:6. And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him as righteousness. Now look at this. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's not about the righteousness. Obviously, you lose everything if you don't have the Hebrew, period. I've already seen this. We've seen this. The misinterpretations, the false religions about reading things in English, it's all gone. Okay. What is the planet Jupiter called in Hebrew? Kochav Tzedek. It is Tzedek, as in righteousness. Now again, and he believed the Lord, and he accounted it to him as Tzedek, Tzedakah, Tzedekah, the righteousness of God, but also the planet Tzedek, righteousness, which is also the Kochav. It is the star of Abraham, because that's who he is. Righteousness. Abraham is the epitome of righteousness, right? And also, just so here's fun facts. Sarah, what planet was Sarah? Venus, of course. Isaac is Mars, red, right? And Jacob is what? What's Jacob? The culmination, the perfection, the light of the world. The sun. Jacob is Hashemish, also known as Hachama, the warm, the hot planet. Now, this is where this teaching gets even more interesting. And what I'm going to do is incorporate Dan Yitzchak Abarbanel's commentary with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, okay? He was the Dan, right? Because, he started off in Portugal, but he ended his life in Italy, okay? Dan Yitzchak Abarbanel, born in 1437 in Portugal, but, he kind of had to flee on account of the Spaniards over there. And he died in Italy, in Padua, Italy, in 1508. This man is a commentator for the ages, literally for the ages, as many of his works focused on Mashiach, Gog and Magog. He's got 3 books specifically covering those titles, those topics: the end of days, math, timeline, and of course, given where he came from, refuting Christian arguments and wiping the floor with these idolaters. It's just, this is their argument, and he's just like, at some point it's like, you get, okay, all right, I got it, I have to do it for my people. Okay, at some point you just want to stop. It's like, you know what? Please believe in whatever you want. Please, just leave us alone. In his book, Salvations of His Anointed, that's the English translation, he discusses the very topic we're about to get into from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, giving his commentary to the words of Eliezer Hagadol, Eliezer the Great, and giving us many things to discuss. So again, the only reason I'm bringing an outside source here is because he is discussing Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer on this specific topic that we're talking about. And it just so happens that I'm also learning this on the side, and so I'm like, you know what? It's wonderful, and you guys get bonus tracks over here. So here we go. His works are particularly difficult because he will never just give you the bottom line, as nothing is simple. A lot of people, okay, so what's the truth? What's bottom line? This or this or that. Like, that's not how it works, okay? People, today's generation, they want to be fed it. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Let me turn my brain off because thinking hurts, and just, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll vote this, I'll vote that, and tell me what to say and I'll say it. Not him. He gives you the information, okay? If you cannot understand what he's saying after after all is said and done, then just move on. But he's going to make you work to understand his message. That's the point. He uses 10 words, sometimes 20 instead of 1, but each word carries weight and meaning, thereby giving us such a rich understanding. It's not just a one dot. He paints an entire picture for you to understand what is going on over there and where he brings everything from. Like I said, he incorporates everything, math included. And I'm not a math guy, but he makes it so I can understand. You just need a calculator for certain things. Okay, anyway, so we're about to get into the covenant of the pieces, and we have discussed this before in Parsha teachings, how each level of what Abraham saw referred to one of the 4 kingdoms that will exile Israel in the future, with a different emphasis on Egypt, making it one of 5. In other words, Egypt is the prototype Exodus redemption story, okay? Acharit Kereshit. But we didn't discuss the pieces themselves. Now, how does chapter 15 begin? After these things, achar hadvarim ha'ele. What things? The smiting of the 4 kings. See where I'm going with this? Okay. So we just left off at, and he believed in the Lord, and he accounted him as righteousness, Vayamen Bashem, Vachshevalo Tzedakah, because the Kochav Tzedek was literally moved for Abraham. And he said unto him, I am the Lord who brought you forth from Ul Kasdim, right? To give you this land to inherit. Same thing like I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you this land to inherit it. Ha'aretz hazot l'rishta. Everything from the days of Abraham. Why it's so important for Israel to be in the land of Israel. You gave to Abraham. Why are you sitting outside the land? And he said, O Lord God, how will I know that I will inherit it? How will you know? Because Abraham, I'm about to show you what is going to transpire. Here, you want to know? Okay. Careful what you wish for, son. Here we go. I'm about to show you what is going to transpire from this time until the very end of days, when Mashiach is going to come, as kingdom after kingdom will rise against your descendants and fall. From our text, it says, Rabbi Akiva says, God showed Abraham, our father, at the covenant of the pieces, the four kingdoms reigning and falling. These pieces were basically the four animals, you'll see, the kingdoms reigning and falling, as it is said in Genesis 15:9. And he said to him, take for me 3 heifers and 3 goats and 3 rams and a turtle dove and a young bird. Okay, so I'm telling you this right now. In one place it'll say 3 heifers, in another place it'll say a 3-year-old heifer. Both are wrong. It's not about three of them or 3 years old. It is the combination of 3, a 3-pronged rope, right? That we learned is not easily broken. These 3 are also a hint towards Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They're also a hint towards the later greats, right? Which is Moshe, Aharon, and Miriam. By these 3 and by those 3, the world stand. Okay, now. Oh, and I'll tell you something else. This didn't happen in the physical, meaning get me this, get me this, get me that. It did not happen in the physical. But rather, this was part of the revelation that God showed him, as he is still above the stars, and God is showing him through the stars what is going to transpire. God says, I'm going to show you till the end of time what's going to happen. And you will understand through the plain text in the Torah that this is indeed a revelation. Take for me 3 heifers and 3 goats and 3 rams and a turtle dove and a young bird. Okay. Meshulash, meshulash. Meshulash in modern day Hebrew means triangle. The heifers. This is the 4th kingdom. This is Edom, as a heifer eats grass in the field. Okay. Why is it Edom? Who's Edom? It's Christianity. Okay. A heifer eating grass will not stop consuming until there is nothing left or it's dead. It tramples on the earth, like Edom, tramples on the earth, crushes everything in its path, and eats every single thing up from the root until there's absolutely nothing left. Also, Daniel 7:23. Oh, and that's the other thing that Abarbanel does. He goes into the Daniel prophecies like never before. And the 4 beasts that we see in Daniel are related to these 4 kingdoms, also related to the 4 kings that Abraham just slaughtered in the last week's teaching. Everything is related. So from Daniel 7:23, it says, so he said the 4th beast represents a 4th kingdom that will be on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole land and trample it and crush it. That's a heifer. That's what they do. The goats. Whatever, 3-pronged goat, I don't know, the goat. Okay, this is Greece, as is said in Daniel 8:8. And the he-goat waxed exceedingly huge, and when it became strong, the great horn broke, and an appearance of 4 sprouted in its stead to the 4 directions of the heavens. This is historically, they're all historically accurate, but we know this even from secular history books, right? This refers to Alexander the Great, who at the height of his conquest was murdered, and then his 4 generals split the kingdom. There's that. Then we have the rams. This is Medo-Persia, as said in Daniel 8:20. The ram that you saw, the one with the horns, represents the kings of Malchei Madayu Paras, Media and Persia. They're very simple. Okay, this next one is interesting though. Turtle dove. In Hebrew it's called Tol, right? Taf Vav Resh. These are the descendants of Ishmael. What? Where'd this come from? Okay, this is not written as the Tol, Hatol, which spells out Torah. Hatol is Hey Taf Vav Resh. Torah is Taf Vav Resh Hey. Same spelling, just mix up. That's Hatol. But it doesn't say Ha-Tol. There's no Hey. It's just Tol, which spells out Tol, okay? But rather written in Aramaic. If you read this in the Aramaic, what does it mean? Tol is Shol. It means bull. Toro in Espanol. See? Okay. Comprende. Vámonos. We have seen the Torah refer to the Tol as Ha-Tol, the Tol, or Torim, which are indeed birds. As we can see this, for example, in Leviticus 5:17. Ve'im lo tagia yado deise ve'evia imot hashamo asher chata shtei torim, 2 turtle doves or 2 young doves before the Lord. Shtei torim o shnei bnei yonah la'Hashem echad lachatat echad olah. So we see, indeed, it said torim, tol, torim. These are young birds or turtle doves. Okay, but in this case, just tol, if you read it in the Aramaic, it is the shol. Okay, what's the shol now? What's the bull got to do with, or the ox? What's it got to do with this? So why a bull? We already have a heifer, female, okay, so that's Edom, Esav, and now a bull, male, is coming into the picture. So our text says the following. When you bring together a male bull, ox, with the female heifer, they will uncover and rob all the valleys or deep hidden places. This, mind you, is a whole other teaching that I can potentially discuss, and that is the exile of Ishmael. At the end, within the end of the exile of Edom, there is a small exile, a small lull over there for Ishmael to rise. And yes, they are connected one with the other. And I'll just give you a hint for this, because who did Esav marry? First, he married the Canaanite women, which his parents were very, very not pleased with, obviously. So what did he do? He went to his uncle Ishmael and he married his daughter. Here is the union between Ishmael and between Esav. Okay? Keep that in mind. Look at the world today, and then you can see the characteristics of both, one within the other. Not to mention everything they've been going back and forth in Israel over here for at least 2,000 years. Okay. When Ishmael and Edom are combined, this could be the absolute end of the world. And if they had it their way, if they were left around their own devices, that's exactly what would happen. A young bird, gozal. These are Israel, who have been likened to a baby dove. As written in Song of Songs 2:14, Yonati bechagavei hasela, beseter hamadrega, hari'ini et mar'ayich, hashmi'eni et kolech, ki kolech arev u'mar'eich na'aveh. My dove is in the clefts of the rock, in the coverture of the steps. Show me your appearance, let me hear your voice, for your voice is pleasant and your appearance is comely. And later in Song of Songs 6:9 it says, Achat hi yonati tamati, achat. My dove, my perfect one, is but one. But one, that is Israel. Rabbi Acha ben Jacob said, this expression, 3 years old, right? Meshulash, as it says in Hebrew. In Genesis 59, is said only with reference to the mighty in power, as said, and a threefold cord, that's what I was saying, thank you. A threefold cord is not quickly broken, Ecclesiastes 4:12. The 3 years old could also mean just the number 3. The Hebrew says Meshulash, which means triangle. So, is it 3 years old, a 3-year-old heifer, a goat, or a ram, or 3 heifers, 3 goats, and 3 rams? Right? We discussed. But if you will read the commentary, some will say like this, and some will say like that, which is why the next bit is another interesting interpretation that rings true, as it is historically accurate and also telling of things to come. When I say historically accurate, I mean that you don't necessarily need to be a historian to know. You can Google these things and say, yes, in history this actually happened, as opposed to knowing biblical history. And they are connected, one in the same, but a lot of people want to dismiss biblical history. But if you actually read the Torah and see what happens over there, say, yeah, it's historically accurate. And we've given plenty of examples here before. Rabbi Mishal Yasha says, 3 years old, Meshuleshet, refers to a threefold dominion which they would exercise 3 times in the future in the land of Israel. So he's saying 3. So they're not 3 years old, and it's not, and they're not 3 of them, but rather we're talking about meshulash, one on top of the other, a 3-fold dominion that they would exercise in the future land of Israel. Shlosha pa'amim atidim yiyu limshol be'eretz Yisrael. So they will rule. At first, the first time, each one would rule by himself. At the second time, 2 together, okay, so you have 4 kingdoms, right? First time, each and every one of them rules by himself. So you have Babylon, you have Medo-Persia, you have Greece, and you have Rome. Oh, and by the way, very interesting enough, the way God set it up is that each one of these will also eat the other. So you have Babylon that stood. Who took down Babylon? It was the next one. It was Medo-Persia, took down Babylon. Who took down Persia? It was the Greeks. Who took down the Greeks? They basically, Rome. They merged with Rome. They fell to the Romans. You see, one takes down the next. So each of these 4. So these are the 4. Okay, again. So the first time, each would rule by himself. The second time, 2 together would rule, and on the third occasion, all together to fight against the house of David. As it is said, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. Psalms 2:2. So let's break this down, because this is fascinating. At the first time, each would rule by himself. What does this mean? Okay, meaning each of the 4 kingdoms, which equals to our 4 exiles, either from the land or from serving God in the temple, because we know Greece, Israel was still in the land of Israel, but they could not serve God in the temple. We know if we have no access to the temple or the temple is not built, it's considered exile, which means technically today, although I am speaking to you from Jerusalem, Israel, we don't have a temple. We are in exile. Biblically speaking, officially speaking, we are currently still in exile. No 2 ways about it. Okay, so equals 4 exiles, either from the land or from serving God in the temple, ruling and governing the land of Israel. That's the first time by themselves. So we have the Babylonians, 70 years, the Persians, 52 years, the Greeks, 180 years, and the Romans, 540 years. The second time, he said, 2 together. What does this mean, 2 together? This is where we're going to see these kingdoms merge, as these 4 kingdoms split into 2 religions, Islam and Christianity. You dig? Islam is Babylon and Persia, and Christianity is Greece and Rome. Okay, thank you, Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, written 2,000 years ago. Each becoming, by the way, yeah, okay, fine. Each becoming one nation within itself, not based on geography, but religion. Excuse me. So you see, this is a prophecy written down 2,000 years ago of the insanity to come. As we have had both the Christians and the Muslims fighting for control of the land, which is not theirs. This is also called Milchemet Taninim, the War of the Serpents, or the Great Sea Monsters. Taninim Agdolim, the Great Sea Monsters, Edom and Ishmael. As Christianity and Islam are likened to 2 great sea monsters. So the Muslims, Babylon, Persia, conquered Israel from the Christians, Greco-Roman, right? When Islam became a thing, and they held her for around 471 years. Then the Christians came and took Israel from the Muslims and ruled for 85 years. Then the Muslims came and took Israel from the Christians, and between the Mamluks and the Ottoman Empire, both are Islam, obviously. They ruled Israel until 1917, when the British came in. There you go. These are the second time 2 together, meaning 2 times 2 together. 1, 2 together. You get that? Okay? 4 kingdoms merged into 2 religions, which are still called kingdoms. Islam, Christianity. Okay. And then they were taking turns. And in the end, they're all coming together. So we'll see this. Okay, so we know that it's written in the book, what it's written in the books about Rome ruling the world for 12 months, and meaning in the end of days. Talking about right now in the Chavlei Mashiach, Rome is going to rule the world for 12 months, and specifically in the land of Israel for 9 months, like the time of a pregnancy, which in the end, the land will give birth to Mashiach. On the third occasion, all together to fight against the house of David. What is this? This specifically is Gog and Magog. Okay? And we know Gog and Magog is not one war, but there are many, many wars of Gog and Magog. If you read the prayers before Seudah Shlishit, the reason we have Seudah Shlishit is against Jacob to save us from milchamot Gog uMagog, the wars of Gog uMagog. There's not just one, and it's not going to be all of a sudden. We're going to see everything fall into place. Edom will rule Israel. Ishmael will come after them to fight each other, and they will all turn eventually on Israel. And from this chaos, the son of David will flourish. This is why he's called a shoot, tzemach, because he comes from the ground, from beneath the surface, growing, establishing roots until the time is right for him to burst out. Also of him it is written in Psalms 85:12, Emet me'eretz titzmach, v'tzedek mishamayim nishkaf. Truth will sprout from the earth, and righteousness will look down from heaven. Who is the tzedek from Shamayim? That's the star of Abraham. Where's the shoot of Jesse coming from? The earth. Yeah, not from the heavens. Mashiach is not there. Mashiach is down. Just read the plain text. So while the Christians and Muslims are waiting for Jesus to come from the heavens, the Muslims believe that as well, by the way. I did a little bit of reading. The Jews don't walk around with eyes up, but rather down, while our hearts are focused upward. That's why. They can't see it. They can't see it. They're like, what? Remember that scene from Indiana Jones, right? The goblet thing. Anyway, the third one, really good with Sean Connery, right? They're all looking off the cliff because they thought that he fell off, and then he comes and he's looking there. He's like, yeah, this crazy stuff. What's going on over here? Just look what the text says. Mashiach's coming from the ground. What else is coming from the ground? All the shmutz, all the earth. That's why Mashiach is not going to be a great nobody. Listen, all due respect, there's this thing going on right now in Israel. There's this, I'm not even mentioning names. Okay, if you know what I'm talking about, great. There's this rabbi that in all the Christian sites and all these things, look, they're kissing his hand. Here's their Messiah, who's meaning the false Messiah, the Antichrist, and all this stuff. Mashiach, according to the sages, is not a great rabbi. You have to understand this. He's not a great rabbi. You know when he knows he's going to be Mashiach? When you know he's going to be Mashiach. That's it. Boom. When he gets he's endowed with all the powers from God. Up until then, regular dude that no one would ever think to look at. So it's not going to be a guy who's, very, very popular that everyone knows about. It can't. Not according to the sages. A regular guy with a good heart. Humble dude, right? If there are any left out there. That's why they will never be able to see it. That's why they're all going to turn on us, because the Quran speaks about the end of days just like the book of Revelation. It is the same thing. Same thing. And when you read it, you'll see that they believe exactly the same thing. But in the end, who's going to get it? Yeah, of course we're going to get it. Which is why the real son of David is going to take them both out. Rabbi Joshua said, Abraham took his sword and divided them, each one into two parts. It is said in Genesis 15:10, and he took for him all these, and he divided them in the middle, and he placed each part opposite its mate, but he did not divide the birds. Okay. Now look what Abarbanel says about this. He says, we should not even think that the wise, he refers to Rabbi Eliezer, the wise, HaChacham, that Rabbi Eliezer would add anything beyond what the Torah states, because we don't do that. They do. We don't. For when God told Abraham to take for him the animals, there is no doubt that Rabbi Eliezer believed that this was within a prophetic vision. Remember, he was up the stars. Now go take for me animals. Where? But rather, it is as if he brought the animals, and it is as if he cut them in half, and it is as if the birds of prey came down to eat the carcasses, and it is as if Abraham shooed them away. Back to Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. Were it not for the fact that he divided them, the world would not have been able to exist, but because he divided them, he weakened their strength. And Abraham, he weakened their strength, and he brought each part against its corresponding counterpart, as it is said, and he laid each half over against the other. In other words, they're going to eat themselves. What is this the equivalent of? This is weakening them, like the breaking of the klipot. Why did Abraham have to go to Egypt? To break the klipot over there. Why did Jacob go early? To break the klipot over there. You see, all this had to happen. Why did Jacob have to go to Lavan's house to break those klipot? Who came from Lavan? Bilam. Everything is related. Nothing is by accident or by chance. That's the same reason God told Abraham to walk all throughout the land of Egypt, land of Israel, and then obviously go down to Egypt, to weaken its strength for when his descendants would later be there. So we read that Abraham divided all the beasts, but not the birds. And the young pigeon he left alive, it is said, but the bird he did not divide. Hence you may learn, or as they say, hence thou mayest learnest that there was not any bird there except a young pigeon. Why was the young bird not divided? Because like we said, the other one is a Torah and Ben Yonah. The Torah is likened to Ishmael. Because the young bird is likened to Israel. The young bird, the Ben Yonah is likened to Israel. So we have an incredible scenario of the four exiling nations who will break up into two groups and stand at the end against Israel. 4 nations, 2 groups, 1 army against Israel. And so you have Christianity and Islam, whose end will not be happy. And we didn't even get to the best part yet, and Israel, who is the smallest of them all, which will be untouched. The bird of prey. Okay, it didn't say birds, it said bird. But again, I'm reading the English fine. The bird of prey came down upon them to scatter them and to destroy them. I wouldn't say scatter them, but to destroy them, let's say. The bird of prey is nothing less than David, the son of Jesse, who is compared to a speckled bird of prey, as it is said, is mine heritage unto me as a speckled bird of prey. Jeremiah 12:9. Son of David. Now look at that. All the players are around at the end. Everybody. So the question that should arise from this is that if the carcasses are the 4 kingdoms split into 2 idolatrous nations in the end of days that will try and destroy Israel, and if the bird of prey is Mashiach ben David, who is coming to destroy these nations, right? Then why is Abraham chasing him away from doing so with his sword? We gotta, if this is in the other way, right? Let's ask that. Mashiach, come, do what you gotta do. Why is Abraham? Because trust that Abraham knows exactly what he's doing. God just showed him the end of time. So he knows what he's doing. So let's see what he's doing. This valid question will be answered as our text unfolds. But just as an FYI, the sword, what is the sword equal to? It's equal to praying. Just know that. When Jacob said that he conquered all the land from the Amorites, bechalbi ubekashti, by my sword and by my bow, sword is praying and mitzvot. Okay? There were physical battles, obviously, but that's what it is. That is our strength as Jews, as Israel. Our power is not in our fists or in our mighty army. For goodness sakes, it is the power of speech in our mouths. That's why we are called to be pure, because if we are not pure, what comes out, our prayers are not going to get answered. But if we walk holy, tamim, innocently before God, that's when God's like, yeah, whatever you say, because now we're in alignment. Now you're on the right frequency as God. When the sun began to rise, this happened, the whole thing started from in the middle of the night, right? When the sun began to rise, Abraham sat down and waved his scarf over, I don't know why it says scarf, wave his scarf over them so that the bird of prey should not prevail over them until the evening came. Abarbanel says the following, Abraham saw the length of the exile in all its forms, meaning it wasn't just that that Israel were not in our land, but we were being persecuted and being tortured, murdered, and degraded since the first exile in Babylon until this very day. Nothing has changed. Just because you think, because Jews are not living in concentration camps or wherever, that everything is hunky-dory. In the meantime, they're getting their souls sucked out of them. You can't count 10 or 15 million Jews in New York or in the States today. Most of them aren't even Jews. And I'll tell you something else. At least a third of Jews here in Israel are also not Jews. Straight up. So when you have someone who, whose parents didn't even get married with a kosher wedding, they don't keep any kind of separation, they don't keep the laws of Nida, none of these things. The children that are born to them are born of sin. So they have children born of sin, they have children born of sin. These people aren't even considered married. They have children, they're not even considered Jews, they're considered abominations. Now you have abominations marrying abominations, and so on and so forth. And this is what's going on right now. Okay, so a cleansing has to take place. No, I don't know who everyone is, obviously, but we know that this happens, and if you read in the Torah, you know that it's obviously not a good thing. It is an abominable thing before the Lord. Read the book of Leviticus. Okay, now, and he thought, Abarbanel continues, and he thought that perhaps his descendants might wake up on their own in order to get out of the exile before the allotted time, just as the Ephraimites left Egypt 30 years too soon and perished as a result. In other words, what happened over there specifically with the 30 years? Right here, when Abraham was 70 years old, 70, meaning this was before the Lech Lecha where he was 75, 70 years old, and he says your descendants will come out, meaning the exodus will happen in 400 years from when your descendants are born. Who is your descendant? Isaac, meaning when you're 100. So that is 30 years later plus the 400 years, right? They didn't count the 30 years of between the time Abraham got the prophecy to the time Isaac was born. And this is why, and we've discussed this also in previous classes, the Ephraimites left early. They went through the way of the Philistines. The Philistines slaughtered them. And that's where the prophecy of the Valley of the Dry Bones is actually Ezekiel resurrecting the dead of the tribe of Ephraim. That's what happened there. They went back to the land of Israel. In the Talmud, I even gave you the example. One of the rabbis says, yes, I'm a third or fourth generation descendant of the resurrected tribe of Ephraim from the edge of the wilderness. That's why God didn't want to take them there, because they didn't want to see their fallen brethren. So yes, Valley of the Dry Bones. And so Abraham, he continues, and so Abraham sent away Mashiach so that he should not come before the time of the evening. We started off with, and the sun came up, right? And the sun came up, and this is where the bird of prey is coming down. Until the time of the evening, he was fighting him all day. Don't come yet, don't come yet. That is when he's supposed to come. Mashiach is supposed to come in the evening. In the evening, le'et erev. The only time the Mashiach can come is in the evening of the 6th day, just like on the Sabbath eve. Now, I know the Talmud says, you have the days and Motzei Shvi'it Ben David Ba, but that's something different. We're talking about Shemitah, and we're talking about a different timeline. These things do coincide, but if you think about it, actually, we're going to discuss it. So here we go. I'm getting ahead of my own self. Messiah is connected to David, right? We know this. Who's connected to Adam? Adam, Aleph, Dalid, Mem. Adam, David, Mashiach. Okay? Adam, David, Mashiach. So what is going to happen has to be a complete and perfect tikkun. That is a rectification. This, again, is the difference, so you guys make that distinction. There is tshuva, that is repentance, and there is tikkun, rectification, correction for that which has been broken. Adam did indeed do tshuva, but his rectification is still happening until this very day. 6,000 years, or right before the 6,000 years are done. Just like Adam, who was created, we're actually going to We're going to go through Adam's timeline to give us a better idea of the times that Mashiach absolutely has to come and see where we are. Okay. Through the timeline of what happened, we can have an idea of things to come and can also rule out any false messiahs along the way. There have been many. Midrash Tehillim 92 section 3 says, Be'erev Shabbat, on the Sabbath eve, Nivra Adam Rishon. On the Sabbath eve, Adam was created. The first man was created. In the first hour of the day, and the first hour of the day, depending on the time we're talking about, that's 12 hours of daytime. Yom is daytime, not a 24-hour period. So it's between 5:20 to 5:50 a.m. On the first hour, Adam was a thought of the day. On the second hour, he was to be like the angels. On the third, his dust was gathered. God was gathering his dust. On the fourth, he created the boundaries. God is doing all these things. Yes, God created the boundaries. On the fifth hour, he made him a golem. On the sixth, golem is like a chunk, right, of just, all the mixture and everything, raw material. On the sixth hour, he formed him. On the seventh hour, he blew a soul into him. On the eighth hour, he stood him on his feet. Adam's alive now. On the eighth hour. On the ninth hour, he commanded him, right? Don't eat from the tree. On the 10th hour, Adam sinned. On the 11th hour, he was judged. On the 12th hour, he was exiled. Enter Shabbat. Okay? In other words, so 3 hours. Adam sinned 3 hours before Shabbat. If Adam would not have sinned within those 3 hours and would have entered Shabbat, that's already the eternal Shabbat. So everything was going just fine until the last 3 hours of the day where he sinned, was judged, and then exiled. So if we take 1,000 years and divide it by 12 hours of the day, right? Because it's daytime, it's not a 24-hour period. We get what? It's 83.3, but we'll just go with 83, okay? Meaning that's 1 hour. 1 hour is equal to 83 and change years. Adam sinned in the 9th hour, meaning he had 3 hours to go to enter into everlasting rest, meaning a day, 1,000 years, that is Shabbat. Yom Shekulo Shabbat. Yom, a day. Which is part of our prayers. We pray, Yom Shekulo Shabbat. 83.3 times 3, meaning the last 3 hours, every hour is 83.3, equals 249.9. So let's round it off to 250, okay? So if you take our 6,000 years, are you with me? Last 3 hours, 1,000 years. If you take our 6,000 years minus 250, meaning the last 3 hours, you get 5750. Where are we right now? According to whatever calendar they're calculating today, 5783. Meaning that we are in the time of the hour of sin, which began 32 years ago. In other words, it began in 1990, our time. That hour, 83 years, ends in 2073, assuming that we don't take into account the missing 166 years from our calendar, which we said that time is actually missing from our calendar. Where do we get this? From the moment that Israel were exiled to Babylon, our calendar got screwed up, where the rest of the world's calendar stayed the same. In other words, nothing makes sense. We are basically now 164 to 166 years in the future, essentially. But if you do take these missing years into account, those are the last 2 hours of the day, almost exactly, as 83 times 2 is 166, which means from this very date, we have 50 years left until the clock runs out, till 6,000. And in these 50 years, the temple must stand for at least 40 of those years, which leaves us 10 years, meaning if, let's say, it is, 10 years, so you got 40 years, so that means you have 10 years right now. All this is whatever, which leaves us 10 years. And within these 10 years, the world has to completely collapse in every single way. And from the looks of things, we are right on schedule with that. World War III has to take place, which the Gra predicts will begin and end within 9 to 12 minutes, because it's a war of buttons. You throw a nuke, you get a nuke, and you get a nuke, and you, everybody, okay. We need Mashiach ben Yosef to bring all of Israel back to repentance. We need the rule of Edom in Israel for 9 months. We need Mashiach ben David. We need the temple. We need the gathering of the exiles. We need the gathering of the nations against Israel for Gog and Magog. We need the final destruction of anyone alive who has not gotten with God yet. We need the resurrection of the dead. We need the great day of judgment. My people, I am very hopeful and optimistic for the things to come. It's all being scrunched so every last one of us could do tshuva before. And most importantly, remember this, it can happen anytime. Anytime, that is the whole thing. It says Mashiach will come be'eseh chadat, when you least expect it. Oh, it's the timeline, it's the date, it's Erev Pesach, and there's a blood red moon, and so now it's got to be. No, that is not how Mashiach comes. Mashiach comes when you least expect it, when everyone will least expect it. When you think that God completely forgot about you and about this world, and it seems like that's it. We are actually really done. That's when Mashiach comes. Maybe. Anyway, so just like Abraham was sending away Mashiach until the time of the evening, at the end of the 6,000th year, so too we must look at the times we live in and get very excited. So again, the magic hour is le'et erev, the time of the evening, right before dark, twilight. As Zechariah 14:7 says, V'haya le'et erev yehi or. And it shall come to pass that at evening tide, le'et erev, it shall be light. Well, but the sun set. And of this, Abarbanel says, there is no doubt that Solomon himself said in Song of Songs 2:7, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the hens of the field, that you neither awaken nor arouse the love until it is desirous. I'll tell you this right now. If Mashiach came right now, no one will be able to stand. No one will be able to stand. Impossible. No one is there. We haven't gone through enough troubles. You know how I know that? Because I'm recording this thing and putting it on YouTube. That's how I know. These ain't troubles. Troubles are like, you haven't heard from me. There's no internet or, deep faking and whatnot. Things are blowing up all over the place and people are getting snatched from their homes and put into concentration camps. That's when you know that we're going through troubles. We need to go through these troubles in order to be purified. Yes? All this has to come because the troubles equals to purification. If we don't do tshuva, this will help us do so. So again, our text says, when the sun began to rise, Abraham sat down and waved off the scarf over them, the sword, whatever, so that the bird of prey should not prevail over them until the evening came. Abraham was fighting off Mashiach from coming all the day, all throughout the day, all the way long day. I've been working on the railroad. Okay, you get it. From the time the sun began to rise, from the 12th hour of the day, which is 1,000 years ago, was a potential time for Mashiach to come and not before. Yes, we understand that there are 2,000 years of Mashiach, but according to this right now, we see he could not have come during the day, but only towards the end. However, Abraham saw that the only time that Mashiach should come is close to the evening. That's it. Meaning towards the end. Where it is said, Abraham sat down and waved his scarf at them. Now again, I don't know why it translates to scarf, because the Hebrew says besodarin. What does this sound like? Because that's what they translate the word besodarin. Sodarin is besodarin beseder. In order. You're going to Leil HaSeder, the night of order. Ma matzav, akol beseder. How you doing? It's all good. Everything is in order. Besodarin. He was saying, no, you can't come early. It has to come in the right time. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Abraham saw all the exiles, beginning with Egypt, up until Edom, which is in the end, and all the events that must transpire in order for the tikkun olam, the rectification of the world, to be complete. And only then could Mashiach come, not before. That's impossible, and that flies in the face of how God set everything up. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, "From this you may learn that the rule of these 4 kingdoms will only last one day, according to the day of the Holy One, blessed be He." Now there's a difference between Yom, day, and Yom Echad, one day. Genesis 1:5. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And it was evening and it was morning one day. You see? Vayikra Elohim la'or Yom. Yom is light. That's only when it's light. Lachoshech kara laila. Together, vayi erev vayi boker, Yom Echad. Yom Echad is only when it's light and dark. So you have 12 hours and 12 hours. Day 12 hours, night 12 hours. But one day, 24 hours. This is why we're counting the day only for the 1,000th year. Meaning that one full day is 2,000 years, right? One full day of God is 2,000 years, like we said. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, from this, the understanding that we just gave, you may learn that the rule for these 4 kingdoms will only last one day, meaning the 2,000 years, according to the day of the Holy One, blessed be He. Not for 1,000 years, one day, one full day, according to the Holy One, blessed be He. That's the 2,000 years. This is the final exile, which we are currently in. It's been that long. Remember, the vision/revelation that Abraham is receiving began at night, which is how creation began. That's why he got it at night. Everything was first, it was dark, right? But then we see the sunrise in the story right now with Abraham, but also in Genesis, when he was postponing the Mashiach until the time he is supposed to come, which is towards the evening before dark of the end of the complete day. Rabbi Elazar ben Arach said unto him, verily it is so according to your word, as it is said in Lamentations 1:13, He has made me desolate and faint all day long. Netanani shama kol hayom daveh. And our text continues and says, except for 2/3 of an hour. A full day except for 2/3 of an hour. Sorry, excuse me, not a full day. A day of light, meaning 12 hours except for 2/3 of an hour. So if an hour, like we said, is 83 years, 2/3 would be 56 years. Know that it is so. Come and see. For when the sun turns to set in the west, during 2 hours, its power is weakened, and it has no light. Likewise, whilst the evening has not yet come, when the Son of David will raise the light of Israel, and it was evening, this is it, will raise the light of Israel, as it is said, and it shall come to pass that at evening time there shall be light. Who is the light that will shine in the dark? That would be Israel. The final tikkun happens by Mashiach. He's the one that puts the bow on the thing. Boom. Now Israel finally shines exactly how Israel's supposed to shine. Remember, our faith is all about the collective. That we are dependent 100% entirely on our fellow. That's it. We are all about the collective. We get judged both collectively and individually. The nations get judged individually. There is no one who is more important than the next because we need everyone. I ask you this, is a king more important than a street sweeper? No, not when it comes to the redemption, because the king could be inside, but if that street sweeper, who is still part of Israel, is not in the inside, the whole redemption is put on hold. You see? There's no stronger or better. There's everyone or no one. Like we learned, you go, we go. Where do we get this from? From God Himself, who numbered Himself within the 70 nephesh that descended to Egypt, who became the 10th to complete a minyan in accordance with the brothers selling Joseph. We've discussed these things. In the counterfeit religions, this idea is too complex for stupidity, which is why they shrink everything down, including God, into one man, no problem. It's a one-stop shop, no hassle, no problem. Everything's all about one man, and that's it. fools, straight up. Whatever. Abraham arose and prayed before the Holy One, blessed be He, that his descendants should not be enslaved by these four kingdoms. So this started at night. It went, and then the sun came, and then he was shooing away the bird of prey the entire day until the evening came again. He saw their power and their strength and an exile stretching for thousands of years. So Abraham started to pray against his children going, is God not going to listen to Abraham? Of course he's going to listen to Abraham. So what happened? Look what it says next. Genesis 15:12. Vayehi hashemesh lavo. Vayehi. Now the sun was ready to set, and a deep sleep fell upon Abraham. Abraham, I'm going to knock you out right now. This is for your own good and for your descendants' own good. This has to take place. You cannot pray for them. And behold, a fright, a great darkness was falling upon him. Vayehi hashemesh lavo. Sun was about to set. V'tardema nafla Avraham hine'ema chashcha gdola nofelet alav. Abraham is now going for round 2. This whole thing began at night. Again, if you read with me, the whole thing began at night when God woke up Abraham from his vision and took him outside. Then God took him outside of space and time and showed him the cosmos. And he and his descendants are above the stars, the governing bodies of this world, above the angels. He asked God, how will he know that his descendants will be as numerous and as valuable as these heavenly hosts? Because that's all he's seeing. Now God takes him to another place where he shows him the nations and the time frame, meaning go get me this animal, which he didn't physically go get. And as he was fending off Mashiach with his sword, with his prayer, no, not yet, not yet, not yet, it's not the time yet, which as we discussed is his prayer until the time was right, which is when the sun will set yet again. God would now reveal to him in another form called deep sleep, tardema, gone, hello, no, unconscious, the very characteristics of these kingdoms which merge into nations. That's what God's showing him now within this deep sleep. This sleep is the same wording as seen in Genesis 2:21 with Adam. Vayapel Adonai Elohim tardema al ha'adam vaishan vaikach achat mitzlotav v'yizgor basar tachtena. And the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, man, and he slept and he took from his side and so on. You know the deal. And our verse 12, now the sun was already set and deep sleep fell upon Abraham. Okay, and something had to happen. Rightfully so, our text asks the question, can a man pray while he is asleep? Okay. The Maharzu said that Abraham was focused on praying for his descendants for so long, because if you take into account the simple timeline here, then he's been up for roughly 18 to 24 hours in intense download mode, traveling through space and time and layers upon layers of creation from the beginning to the very end. So Abraham prayed so long and so hard that he eventually passed out. And God then kept him under with the deep sleep falling upon him. God did that to him in order to show him the kingdoms and to take him to where he needed to go next. And also to keep him from praying, to keep him from praying that these things should not take place, because these things had to take place, because it's all part of God's plan, as our text says. But this teaches you that Abraham was lying down and sleeping because of the intensity of his prayer, that his descendants might pass over these four kingdoms, as it said, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. Abarbanel, though, says something else, right? Prayer is something that involves your senses as self-awareness of both mind and body, as well as intentions and focus. It's not easy to pray, okay? For instance, we are told to pray in a minyan with other people. It's hard. I can't. It's very difficult for me, but that's what we're told to pray. There's some people that they just go there and they're whatever. I prefer to pray by myself, but again, we have to, Jews only, got to pray in a minyan. Okay. Our sages say that In other words, it takes a lot out of us. That focus is both physically and mentally exhausting. And look how long Abraham's already been at it. Our sages say that praying without the proper kavanah, intention, is like a body without a soul. In other words, it doesn't do anything. So if I'm praying and my mind is elsewhere and I'm just going and I'm reading the words, saying the thing, it's like a body without a soul. Meaning I just did nothing. In fact, I probably did more damage. And since God put a deep sleep upon Abraham, he was not able to pray because he did not have his senses or his wits about him, being unconscious and all. And one more option is that Abraham chose to stop praying for his descendants to not go through everything they needed to go through. It was because he accepted their fate. And so when it was that Abraham heard of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, he prayed time and again until there was nowhere left to go. But now when it comes to his descendants, does he seemingly give up? Heavens forbid, of course not. This is the same concept of, go, I'm giving you the best land in the world, and then there's a famine in the land. Or, I will give you a son. Here's your son. Give me back your son. You see what I'm saying? Okay. He believed God. This is necessary. And he believed God with all his heart, with every fiber of his being. Not like, okay, because if any of us today could push a button that Israel would not have to go through the tribulation for Ben David to come and the temple to be built, I don't know who would not press that. I'd press that button in a heartbeat. But Abraham, above the stars, who sees exactly God's plan and understands what needs to take place, he's like, you know what? Remove this from me. I don't need this right now. I trust you. Seeing his descendants and what we got to go through for thousands of years, but it's all for the best. That's why he's a man. Okay. Abraham knew that God does not contradict himself, and so he believed without hesitation that when God told him, please look downward at the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them, and he said to him, so will be your seed. And it said in the next verse, in verse 6, and he believed in the Lord and credited to him as righteousness. Because he knew that a rough patch, right? It's an understatement of the millennia of existence, was necessary in order for the promise to come to pass. He understood what had to happen after, so he said, you know what, this is really small potatoes compared to the kind of reward that's coming afterwards that you need to go through in order to be like that. What God saw, see these angels? See them? You see their power? You see where they're connected to? Your kids, like this, above this. So they have to go through this okay, so they're going through this, but then there's this, and that's eternity, and it gets better from there. Yup. Rough patch. Okay. Meaning that his initial question or concern, whether or not his descendants will be able to endure a 2,000-year exile with persecution, torture, shaming, and plenty of murder, was laid to rest because he never doubted the word of God. Now the sun was ready to set, and a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, a great darkness was falling upon him. So these are the four words over here that coincide with the four kingdoms. Ema, terror. This is the fourth kingdom, Rome, as said in Daniel. After this I saw in the visions of the night, and behold, a fourth beast, awesome and dreadful and exceedingly strong, that had huge iron teeth. It ate and crushed and trampled the rest with its feet. And it was different from all the other beasts that were before me, and it had 10 horns. Chashicha, darkness. This is the Greek Empire, who attempted to darken the eyes of Israel from the Torah and its commandments. They said, yeah, listen, live amongst us. Join our Olympic Games. Let's work out together, oiled up in the nude, outside while we're getting a tan. No problem, but no Torah, no mitzvahs, no temple, none of that stuff. You are one of us now, as in darken their eyes. You can't even see the Torah. Gdolah, great. This is the Medo-Persia Empire, which was great enough to be able to sell Israel for nothing. When did Persia sell Israel for nothing? When Ahasuerus gave Israel away to Haman for change, pennies on the dollar. Nophelet, falling. This is Babylon, by whose hand the crown of Israel fell. That's when it all started first temple destruction. That's when the Atara came off. Now, in the past, when I've taught about this, I've been through other commentary giving the opposite order of the four kingdoms. In other words, the Eimah, the terror, that's Babylon, who was the thing. The two middle, then you have, it was in order. It was the darkness, it was great, the great Greek Empire, and of course, Rome, which will be falling and ultimately connected to the statue of Daniel. All these things are connected. But this is what Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer says, and so Abba Abarbanel is going right now with this interpretation. Truth is, it's whatever. It doesn't matter, but it's good to know these things. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, like who cares. What I'm saying is, this will not, whether you believe this or that, they are all relevant because they're sources that connect everything. So it's a different viewpoint. We'll go with that. And then the last word is alav, falling upon him. Alav, this is Ishmael, upon which the son of David will flourish, as said in Psalms 132:18. But let's read verse 17 as well, for good measure. There I shall cause David's horn to sprout. I've set up a lamp for my anointed. His enemies I shall clothe with shame, and upon him his crown will shine. So in other words, literally upon them. And if you think about it, that makes sense because God's temple is about to crush the dome of the rock that's on Temple Mount, right? Our temple's got to go somewhere. There's something else over there kind of in the way right now. Crush. Literally speaking here. So crush, then sprout. Rabbi Zera said these kingdoms were created only as firewood for Gehenom, as it is said, behold, a smoking furnace and a flaming torch that passed. 15:17. This smoking furnace is a reference to Gehenom, to hell, which will solidify the separation, breaking, and the separation, the breaking, and ultimate destruction of these four kingdoms and these two false religions. We can see this reference in Malachi 3:19. For lo, the sun comes glowing like a furnace, and all the audacious sinners and all the perpetrators of wickedness will be stubble, and the sun that comes shall burn them up, so that it will leave them with neither root nor branch, says the Lord of hosts. This is not a furnace and fire, but rather only Gehenom, which is compared to a furnace, as it is said in Isaiah 31:9. And his rock shall pass from fear, and his princes shall be dismayed at the miracle, the word of the Lord, whose fire is in Zion, and whose furnace is Jerusalem. You want to know where they're going to get burnt up from? Right here. Everything comes out of here. It says, Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. From Zion, Torah will come out. So I ask you again, where is your teacher sitting? So I just want to add something interesting here. And he said to Abram, you shall surely know. Vayomer le'Avraham yado teda. This is like mot tamut, right? Die, you will die. It's a double meaning in this world and in the world to come. Right? When God told Adam, if you eat from this tree, you will surely die. But it didn't say you will surely die, because then you'd only die once. Mot tamut, mot in this world and tamut in the world to come, but because it's Shabbat, it didn't happen. We know that. So here we have the same thing. So there's a doubling of the word here. Yadot, know you shall know. The first knowing is that they are slated to be in Egypt 400 years. And also, now get this is cool, and also in the final exile, which could be seen as Edom. I was looking around for when the Muslim Empire ruled the land of Israel and for how long. Like we said, in the last one, the Toll, is going to be Ishmael. That will be the Ottoman Empire, that they actually ruled the land of Israel. Who and how long did they rule the land of Israel? We know. They were in Egypt for 400 years, and the Ottoman Empire ruled in the land of Israel from the year 1517 to 1917. Exactly 400 years. Coincidence? Believe it or not. And that's our class today. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this crazy, crazy ride. Stick around for next week when we tackle Abraham's 8th trial. 8th. Get it? You should. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye now.